Shalom Aleichem. Today we have a learning from Insights in the Torah by Rabbi Zalman Sorotzkin. Zatzal. Rabbi Zalman Sorotzkin. Let's take a look. This week's Parsha is Balak. So the question is, it says, Vayar Balak ben Sipor. Balak, the son of Sipor, saw everything that Yisrael did to the Amorites. So what is it that he saw? What is it that he saw, as opposed to Yisro heard? Yisro heard everything. What is it that he saw? And then why does the Torah say 4 pasukim later that Balak was the king of Moab at that point, the king of Moab? Let's take a look at what Sorotzkin says in Insights in the Torah. Vayar Balak ben Sipor Eiskol asher oso Yisrael lo emori. Balak, son of Sipor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. Then the second pasuk says, Vayogor Moab mipnei ha'om ma'od ki ravhu vayokotz Moab mipnei bnei Yisrael. And Moab, the people of Moab became very frightened of the people, because it was numerous, of the people of Israel, because it was numerous. And Moab was, thank God, and Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. In other words, Moab was very frightened, and they became disgusted. Vayomar Moab el ziknei Midyon. So Moab said to the elders of Midyon, Ato yilachachu hakohol eskol sevivosenu kilacho chashor es yerek hasodeh uvalak ben Sipor melech lemoav bo'esahi. So then Moab said to the elders of Midyon, now the congregation will lick up our entire surroundings, as an ox licks up the greenery of the field. Balak, son of Sipor, was king of Moab at that time. In other words, they were afraid that the Bnei Yisrael would take over everything, and they were afraid of that. Therefore, Balak. And then it says that the fourth pasuk, Balak, the son of Sipor, was the king of Moab at that time. Balak ben Sipor melech lemoav bo'esahi. So wouldn't it be more? Isn't it understood that he was the king of Moab? Okay, let's see what Rabbi Sorotzkin says. Vayar Balak saw. The opening verses of this portion present several difficulties. Why does Balak see the events that have happened, whereas Yisro, in a similar context, Shemos 18:1, Yisro was the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. Jethro, in a similar context, heard of Israel's travails. Moreover, why does the Torah record that Balak saw in verse 1, when we are not told until verse 4 who Balak was, namely the king of Moab? Furthermore, why is it that Balak, the individual, saw, but Moab, the nation, became very frightened? In other words, Balak, the individual, he saw what was happening, and then Moab, the nation, became very frightened, and Moab was disgusted. In verse 4 we read that Balak was king of Moab at that time. Commenting on this seemingly superfluous phrase, Rashi explains that, quote, at that time, he was not really fit to be king of Moab, for he was actually a Midianite prince. However, he was appointed king as an emergency measure due to the situation at that time. It says Bo'isahi at that time. So Moab was the king at that time. So Rashi says that he was not really fit to be king. He was not a Moabite altogether. He was a Midianite prince. He was appointed king as an emergency measure due to that situation at that time. It seems rather difficult to imagine how the Moabites could appoint this Midianite prince as their king, since the two nations were mortal enemies. See Rashi, Bereshis 36:35. So it says in Rashi, in Bereshis 36:35, that they were mortal enemies. It appears that Prince Balak traveled to Moab to explain to them the gravity of the security situation after the downfall of Sichon. Apparently, the Moabites had not realized how seriously they were affected until they had heard Balak's analysis. But Balak did not come only to frighten the Moabites. He had a plan. His countrymen and acquaintance, the well-known sorcerer Bilam, would certainly agree to come help him out, not employing swords and arrows, which had already failed in Sichon's battle against Israel, but rather using speech as a weapon. They would use speech as a weapon, not swords and arrows. The Moabites, impressed with Balak's perception and foresight, which is described by the word vayar, and he saw. So that's what it means, and he saw. Vayar Balak ben Tzipor. Eis kol asher oso Yisrael lo-emori. The Moabites, impressed with Balak's perception and foresight, which was described by the word vayar, and he saw, and so they were in need of his personal connection to Bilam. The Moabites, impressed with Balak's perception and foresight, which is described by the word vayar, and he saw, and in need of his personal connection to Bilam, immediately decided to make him their ruler, at least temporarily, despite the hostility between their two nations. Thus, when Balak first saw these events, he was not yet king of Moab. It was only in verse 4, after inciting fear and disgust, verse 3, among the Moabites by informing them of his thoughts on the matter, that he was temporarily appointed king of Moab. Let's take a look at verse 3. Vayogor Moab mipnei ha'om ma'od ki ravhu vayokotz Moab mipnei b'nei Yisrael. And that's the number 3. And Moab, the people of Moab became very frightened of the people because it was numerous, and Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. So therefore, Balak, a Midianite prince, came to the Moabites to tell them of his analysis of what was going on. And the Moabites decided, okay, that they like his analysis, and they don't like it, but they were convinced by his analysis, because it says Vayar Balak, and he saw what was happening. And they decided they will appoint him king, it says. And so therefore, that's why in the first number, the fourth pasuk, it says that Balak ben Tzipor melech laMoab bo'isahi. And Balak, the son of Tzipor, was king of Moab at that time. So this is from Insights in the Torah. Oznaim la Torah Bamidbar. This is Rabbi Zalman Sorotzkin. This is the work of Rabbi Zalman Sorotzkin. Zatzal Art Scroll Masorah Series, Masorah. So this is Insights into the Torah. Thank you very much, Bamidbar. Thank you very much. Kol Tov. Zeit Matzliach.